One chilling autumn night, on a desolate stretch of highway, deep in the heart of the Ozark Mountains, two friends found themselves in a terrifying predicament. Their names were Mark and Sarah, and they had been driving for hours on a remote road, completely surrounded by dense forests with no other soul in sight. The red warning light on the dashboard signaled an impending doom. They were running out of gas. Panic gripped their hearts, and their once lively conversation turned to hushed whispers. The only sound that pierced the ominous silence was the low growl of the engine, its lifeblood draining away. Desperation set in as they realized they were stranded in the middle of nowhere. Mark searched his phone for any signs of a gas station nearby, but there was no signal. Sarah's trembling hand reached out to the car's radio, hoping to catch a faint signal of any passing vehicle. Static and eerie whispers were the only response. A haunting backdrop to their growing fear, they decided to leave the car and search for help. Armed with a dim flashlight and a nearly depleted phone battery, they ventured into the dark, moonless night. The towering trees, their branches creaking and swaying with the wind, seemed to conspire against them. The dense woods pressed in, and every step they took was fraught with anxiety. The forest was not a welcoming place, as strange noises seemed to echo from the depths of the wilderness. They heard rustlings, whispers, and even what sounded like a distant, mournful howl. Hours passed, and they stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin, hidden deep in the woods. Its windows were shattered, and the door creaked open ominously. Mark and Sarah had no choice but to enter, hoping to find someone who could help them. Inside, the cabin was a haunting sight. Dust and cobwebs covered the forgotten furniture, and the walls were adorned with strange, cryptic symbols. The air was thick with a musty, suffocating smell, as though the cabin held secrets better left undisturbed. Their hope of finding help quickly evaporated as they realized that the cabin was empty, or so they thought. Suddenly, from the shadows, emerged a figure. Dressed in tattered rags and moving with unnatural, jerky motions, it was a specter of a human, devoid of life or sanity. A tortured soul from the past, perhaps. Mark and Sarah's screams of terror filled the cabin as the figure lurched toward them, its ghastly, hollow eyes filled with an unholy hunger. They tried to flee but found themselves trapped in the nightmarish cabin, in a world where reality had given way to sheer horror. As the creature reached out with bony, twisted fingers, ready to claim them, the headlights of a passing car pierced through the shattered windows, flooding the room with light. The creature hissed and recoiled, disappearing into the darkness. Rescued by the stranger in the car, Mark and Sarah would never forget the night they ran out of gas on that desolate road in the Ozark Mountains. They would never know the true nature of the cabin's horror, but they had ventured into a world where the ordinary and the supernatural converged, leaving them with a spine-chilling story that would haunt their dreams for the rest of their lives. It was a moonless night when Celine's car sputtered to a halt on a desolate road, deep in the heart of the forest. She cursed her misfortune. The out-of-gas sign taunted her from the dashboard. Alone in the pitch-black woods, her only source of light was the faint glow from her phone. She'd heard tales of horrifying, true, out-of-gas horror stories, but she never thought she'd become one. Celine stepped out of the car, her heart pounding with fear. The silence was overwhelming, except for the rustling leaves and distant hooting of an owl. Her flashlight revealed towering trees that seemed to close in on her, making her feel even smaller in the vast wilderness. She decided to leave her car behind and walk to the nearest gas station, a decision she'd soon regret. The path seemed never-ending, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows danced in the corner of her vision, and every snapped twig was like a gunshot in the eerie silence. With every step, her fear deepened. Hours passed, and Celine began to question her decision. The gas station couldn't possibly be this far away. It was then that she heard it, the low, guttural growl that sent shivers down her spine. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows among the trees. She picked up her pace, desperate to get away from the unseen menace. In the distance, she finally spotted a faint light. Hope surged within her as she realized it was the gas station. But as she got closer, the light revealed something sinister. The gas station was abandoned, covered in vines and decay. It hadn't been operational in years. Celine's heart sank as she realized the truth. The horrifying out-of-gas horror stories she'd heard about were not just legends. They were real, and she was trapped in one. She knew she had to find a way out, but the forest had become a labyrinth of twisted trees, and the growls and whispers grew louder. Panic set in as the darkness closed in around her, and she ran deeper into the woods, guided only by the eerie glow of her phone. She stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin. Desperation forced her to push open the creaking door. Inside, she found herself in a dimly lit room, filled with peculiar drawings and symbols etched on the walls. She could feel the presence of something ancient, something malevolent. As Celine turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind her. Terrified, she heard a voice, a sinister whisper that echoed through the cabin. "You shouldn't have come here." The horrifying, true out-of-gas horror story had become her reality. The forest, the cabin, and the unseen menace. They were all part of a malevolent force that thrived on the fear of those who ventured too far into the darkness. Celine's scream pierced the night as the malevolent presence closed in. And her fate became another entry in the chilling legends of horrifying, true out-of-gas horror stories. The night was dark, and the air was filled with an eerie silence as Emma's car sputtered and came to a halt on the deserted highway. She cursed under her breath, realizing she had run out of gas in the middle of nowhere. Alone and surrounded by the dense forest, Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. As Emma anxiously waited for help, she noticed the faint sound of footsteps approaching her. She peered into the darkness, unable to see who was coming. A tall, shadowy figure emerged from the trees, his face obscured by a hood. "Need some help, miss?" he asked in a low, raspy voice. Emma hesitated, her instincts warning her to be cautious. She politely declined, explaining that her friend was on their way. The stranger nodded and disappeared back into the woods. Minutes felt like hours, and finally, Emma's friend arrived with a can of gas. Emma was relieved, but her mind couldn't shake the chilling encounter with the mysterious stranger. What if she had accepted his offer? She shuddered at the thought. A few miles down the road, Emma came across an old, decrepit gas station. She thought her troubles were over, but as she approached, an eerie feeling washed over her. The place looked abandoned for decades, with shattered windows and rusted pumps. Reluctantly, she decided to explore, hoping to find some hidden fuel. Inside, The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the flickering light bulb cast long, eerie shadows on the walls. As she moved deeper into the station, she heard faint whispers and footsteps echoing through the building. Terrified, Emma sprinted back to her car, her heart pounding. She couldn't explain the strange occurrences, but she was certain that she wasn't alone at that abandoned gas station. With her car finally refueled, Emma continued her journey on the desolate road. As she drove, she couldn't help but notice the unusual patterns of the trees lining the route. They seemed to twist and contort, almost forming grotesque shapes. The moonlight revealed bizarre symbols etched into the bark of some trees. Emma's unease grew, and she realized she had entered an area with a sinister history. Local legends spoke of a cursed rad, where travelers who ran out of gas were never seen again. As Emma accelerated, she heard ghostly whispers and phantom cries that seemed to come from the very trees themselves. She pushed harder on the gas pedal, desperate to escape the haunted road. Finally, the highway returned to its normal state, and the unsettling events faded into the rearview mirror. Emma had survived the horrors of the road and the bizarre encounters that came with it. But to this day, she can't forget the feeling of dread that consumed her that night as she was stranded on a highway, surrounded by the unknown and running on empty. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you found this video as captivating as I did. And also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so, and leave your comments in the comment section, and let's keep the eerie conversations going. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. Your likes tell us that you're hungry for more dark mysteries and disturbing stories. And remember, when you're out in the countryside, beware of what may hide in the shadows. Goodbye for now.